everyone, I am Arwa Kharobi, and today we are exploring the critical differences between fractures, type of fractures, if it is perimortem, antemortem or postmortem. This is a question that every bioanthropologist is facing, and you probably have been in this situation before. But let's first define these terms. It is very important in order to distinguish between them. Perimortem or antemortem fractures are the ones that are happening around or just before the death. And these can be resulting from intentional violence actions, for example, like the wars, or it can be just like a simple accident that happened and then it led to the death, unfortunately, to this person. While post-mortem fractures are the ones that are happening after the one has died, which means that it might be just human or animal activities inside the burial, or it might be related to the conditions inside the burials or the decomposition of the cadavers inside the burials. In order to recognize these type of fractures, I will give you 4 principal keys. The first one is about location and distribution, which means that some points, when we saw them fractures in the field, we can imagine that these areas are fragile, which means that they can be easily exposed to post-mortem fractures, like during the excavations, for example. And this is so typical on the scapula here that we can see it's broken, and we can tell that it is a post-mortem fractures. While also when we can, like doing the puzzles, if I have 2 pieces and I see that it's fractures here, but if I can find the other pieces and put it to it, which means that this is a post-mortem fractures, of course. While if it is a antemortem fractures, either I will not have the other piece, or I will see that the location is related more to the trauma or the injury location. So I will have other also indicators on the bones itself. The second key is bone healing and reaction. If someone survives after a fracture, then we will see signs of healings on the area of the injury. While if it's a post-mortem fractures, we will never see this kind of signs, because the healing process, the body didn't try to repair itself, which is something that we can see if the fracture is perimortem or antemortem. In this case, here we have 3 examples of stages of healing. So the first one here, we can see clearly that this person had received an attack here, and it resulted to a fracture. But I don't have any signs of fractures healing around, which means that this person probably died just after this fracture. Here we can see another fracture, but the difference here that I can tell that this fracture is post-mortem. So this is what we call it, it's taphonomy, because the nature of these fractures are completely different. Our second example is a perfect example to show the progress of healing. This person had received an attack on the same place as the first one, but the difference here, you can see it by yourself, that we start to have signs of healing, which means that the body was trying to repair itself. So we have new bone formation. So the hole is starting to close. So in another words, this person has survived for a certain period of time. The last example is showing that this person has received also a blunt trauma, but it's completely healed. So the body did everything that can be done in order to heal the fracture here. So these are the different stages of heal that we can use to distinguish between antemortem or postmortem fractures. The third key is coloration and weathering, which means it's the aspect of the fracture itself. In this case, if it is a postmortem, it would be like more fresh, like because it's happening after. So in this case, we look at the edges and we see if there are differences between the bones themselves, where the fracture is, and the rest of the skeleton. Here it's again another fresh fracture that we can see that the aspects is showing coloration and weathering in a different way if it is antemortem fractures. But we should be careful in this key because it is also something that it might be affected by the burial environment itself, which means that if we have also metal, for example, inside the grave, it can also change the color of the bones. So that's why we should be a little bit careful when we are using this key, but still it might be something that you can use in order to know if it is an antemortem or postmortem fractures. The last key is the context. Either you are working in forensic anthropology or in bioarchaeology, you need to know where these bones come from and from which period and what is the context of these findings, because it will tell us a lot about the possibilities of coloration or weathering or fractures, so we can tell easier if it is perimortem, antemortem or postmortems. Here, just to end with, it's the fractures seen in the humerus, which is your arm, and you can see that the bones here remodeled and it healed it itself. So the body repaired itself with this twisting, while in this normal humerus, let's say not fractured one, you can tell that from the shape of the bone that here we have a fracture and here we don't have a fracture. And these are the keys that we are using in bioanthropology in general in order to know which type of fracture we are analyzing. Macroscopic and microscopic examination. We use both macroscopic and microscopic methods to distinguish between antemortem, postmortem fractures. Macroscopic techniques rely on the structure and mechanical differences between fresh and dry bones. But it can be challenging, especially with fragmented or still fresh bones. Microscopic examination is a helpful tool in bioanthropology, revealing details like bleeding or cellular changes linked to perimortem fractures. So, we discussed these differences between perimortem, antemortem, and postmortem fractures. And this is a short and a quick introduction to what we call the trauma. But you should keep always in mind that trauma is not only about fractures, it can be also about dislocation. For example, here we have an example of dislocation in the elbow, and we can see clearly how the bone remodeled themselves in order to survive and keep this movement. So we have the newborn formation on the distal end of the humerus, and we can see it also in the connection with the ulna, so on the proximal ends of the ulna. And also trauma can be related to diseases, but this is something completely different, and we can discuss it in what we call the paleopathology. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you learned something today about perimortem, antemortem, or postmortem fractures.